Good morning. Today's the second week of lobster season. Diving off of Hollywood Beach and gonna run 2 tanks today. Wind is barely any wind today. We'll see how we do. Let's go. Okay, so we're at the second reef here and we're about to jump in. Now always make sure you check your surroundings and also make sure you don't get tangled up in the cords like I did. Damn boy, look at them legs, you looking thick. But anyways, easy fix, not that big of a problem. You probably should carry a dive knife. But the first lobster here, we're using the tickle stick. I like the aluminum tickle stick better than the yellow fiberglass one. That fiberglass one is trash. I like the tickle stick better than the green snare as well. You can actually get into tighter cracks and holes with the tickle stick. Now in this video here, I'm actually upside down, but you can see that the lobster is really kind of grabbing hold of the rocks, very hesitant to move. I'm trying to force him out. I tried to sneak the net in there, and I freaked him out. He shot back deeper into the rock. Now, always good idea to have a dive light there so you can see how far back they can go. Fortunately for this one, I could still get him. He was still accessible. Again, if you just tap them from behind, you should just walk forward. And you want to make sure that you don't accidentally hit the lobster with your net. That will freak him out and he will shoot backwards. Now make sure you measure the lobster while you're in the water. Florida law states that you have to have one of these with you while you're lobstering. This one was too small, so we let him go. So here there are 2 lobsters. Now after you've been doing this for a long time, you can generally tell which ones are keepers and which ones aren't keepers. Even by picking them up, you can feel whether or not those ones are going to be keepers or not. So this one right here on the right, definitely a keeper. I can tell by the size of it. Gentle, tickling it from the back. Check for the eggs. You always want to make sure you check for eggs, because you would have to release them if they have eggs. Now I'm not going to bother measuring this one, because this one was way bigger than the legal limit. The legal limit has to be 3 inches, okay? It has to be 3 inches from between the eyes all the way to the beginning of the tail, so the carapace. Bigger than 3 inches. Now we're going to go back, check the second one. Maybe the second one's a keeper, we don't know. And he's still there, which is good. Usually they'll get freaked out and sometimes go back. They'll come, recluse. Again, Gentle with the tickle stick, you know, you're not really forcing them out of the hole. Real gentle. See, he got scared, went back deeper into the cracks there. Still within reach, so we can still try to get him. Now you can tell he's a little bit more freaked out, probably because his friend's gone, and now we're going after him. Now this one we'll probably have to measure. And he is a keeper. So we're gonna go make a deposit in the lobster bag. Call this a lobster hotel. You definitely need one of these while you're lobstering. It's a must. So I always like to make sure I got good position with my net. I always like to make sure it's kind of like at an angle and close. Try to get as close as you can to the ground. You know, you also want to try to keep it out of sight if it's possible, because they do see the net. Just gently slip it over top of them and then pin it against the ground. Now this one, I'm pretty sure it was too small, but I'm going to measure it anyways, just to be sure. And he's too small, so I'll just put him right back in his house and move on. Now you also want to be aware of all the possible exits that the lobster can have. You know, if it gets spooked, it can go out a back exit and be completely gone. You'll never even know. So always be aware, because if they go backwards, then maybe you can get them from a different position. But it's just good to know all the different exits and holes around that rock. That was a good catch. Now, one of the hardest things, or one of the disadvantages of using the tickle stick in the net, is that it takes some time to get the lobster untangled from the net. I think that's the biggest disadvantage, and also using multiple things at once. Now this is a special and rare find right here. This is actually called a Spanish lobster. Now Florida law says you can catch as many as you want. It doesn't have to be a certain size. Doesn't, you know, have to be a certain limit on these. So if you can find them, catch them. They're rare, and they are much more difficult to catch. You can see he's much more quick and much more skittish. These guys are a lot smaller too, and generally speaking, they're a lot smaller, almost like a little crayfish. Now, you can see I thought I had him in the net, and you saw them in the net there for a second, but then he made his way out. You can see I was kind of frustrated. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is how much time are you willing to spend on this lobster. You only have so many minutes, on oxygen. So the more time you spend on this one lobster, the less time that you have looking for other ones. So if you're spending too much time and it's not worth it, then that's up to you, but you need to make that decision on whether or not it's worth it. In this case, this is a Spanish lobster. Much more difficult to catch, but for me it was more of a challenge than anything. A lot of dust. You need to be able to see through the dust. Again, you need that dive light. Again, just this is not something you would be able to do with that green snare at all. There's no way you can snare a Spanish lobster. There we go, got him. You can see how small he is. And these ones, again, taste a lot better than the spiny lobster. Another suggestion that I have is to always check your pockets before jumping in. As you can see, I found my car keys on the bottom of the floor there, so I was lucky. That would have been a bad day for sure. So when I run out of oxygen, I just simply change the tanks here. Now I don't have a pressure gauge to tell me how much oxygen is in each tank. Generally speaking, you can feel when you're running out of oxygen. Usually you'll get about 4 breaths before the tank is empty. Kind of feels like you're breathing through a straw. But in any case, that's why I'm at 30 feet. You can make your ascent very quick, and you don't need to decompress at 30 feet. You can stay down there for a very long time. So after hooking up the second oxygen tank, we go right back down and continue lobstering. This should give us about another 45 minutes or so of bottom time. Now in this scenario, you're supposed to use the tickle stick to kind of pinch off the net so they don't swim out of the net. I got lucky and just was able to grab them. But in any case, I've lost a lot of lobsters like that. I would also suggest getting different gloves. These orange gloves that you see out there are are not great. I mean, they'll do the job, but the spines will still kind of find their way through the glove and will poke you here and there. Also would recommend putting some hair ties around the lobster gauge to keep it around your wrist. Makes it very convenient. You don't need to buy retractable lobster gauges whatsoever. Just put a few hair ties on it and that'll do. Now, lobsters can be found anywhere, under any rock, any hole. Typically I find the lobsters not directly on the reef, but maybe 10-15 yards off the reef. I think the reef gets overfished too much. But in any case, if you see a nurse shark in that area, then you know there's not going to be any lobsters, since the nurse sharks like to eat lobster as well. Another thing I would recommend is to carry 2 of everything, especially 2 tickle sticks, 2 flashlights, 2 lobster gauges, because you will lose equipment. It's hard for you to keep track of it all, so carry double of everything. Now here, I probably should have got the flashlight away from him, because he was probably afraid to kind of move forward. But anyway, in any case, I still got him. Not that big of a deal, but usually he won't advance if there's something in front of him like that light or an unfamiliar object. He won't walk forward. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that the reason why you put the net behind the lobster is because they are very quick. They only swim backwards, they don't swim forwards. So they walk forward, but they don't swim forward. So it's always important to have the net behind them so they can swim into the net. And here I found a old fishing rod. I was thinking about keeping it, but nah. Also, their tails can be very strong. With each kick, you gotta make sure you have a firm grasp on these lobsters, because I tell you what, there's been several times where they've flipped their tail and I've lost them, just because I wasn't holding them strong enough. So they're very strong, so hold them tightly, don't let them get away. Again, you can see how fast they are with this lobster. I mean, it's like a blink of an eye and then he was out of there. So, very fast. Very, very, very fast. Now, you see the antennas there. They actually have a lot of meat in those antennas. And if you watch one of my other videos, I use an air hose to blow the meat out of the antennas. You know, if you get like a half a dozen lobsters, that's like another tail's worth of meat that you can get out of those antennas. Another suggestion is to never reach your hand into a hole really without looking. First off, you don't want your hand to get stuck, and secondly, you don't know what's inside that hole. It could be a sea urchin, or even worse, there could be a moray eel in there. If there's an eel in there, you're not going to get a finger back. I guarantee you that. Now here's a perfect example of an egg-bearing lobster. You can see on the underside of the tail a bunch of orange-looking eggs. You can't see it now, but once I turn it over, you'll be able to see. Boom, there it is. So, gotta let those ones go. They'll produce more lobsters for you to catch in the future. Here's another lobster that I thought was going to be a good keeper. Then we turn it over and we find that there's a bunch of eggs on the bottom of this one, so bummer, we gotta let that one go. Now this next lobster, I actually make a single-handed catch here. He was going to swim out of the net. Always got to be ready to catch it. Oh, bam! Golden glove. Now when you're measuring these things, you want to make sure you're not hooking the eye meat. So the meat that's like right between your eyes, you got to get the shell, the hard stuff. Or else you're going to get a false reading, and then if you get stopped by FWC, you'll get a hefty fine for sure. So this is my first video in which I did a voiceover. Just let me know what you think in the comment section. I also just hit 100 subscribers, which is fantastic. I want to give a shout out to my biggest subscribers, my son who's 3 years old, Isaiah, I love you, and his cousin LJ in Arizona. Can't wait to see you. Can't wait to catch lobsters with you. See you soon. Bye.